Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Sonic Discovery. I am your host, David Correa. On this episode, we'll be talking about music from David Byrne, Rae Morris, and JPEGMAFIA. Well guys, thanks so much for tuning into the episode and clicking play. First up on the show, we have the 11th studio album from David Byrne. This is called American Utopia. So if you're not familiar with David Byrne, he at one point was the singer, guitarist, principal songwriter for the group The Talking Heads, which is one of the most innovative bands that were around in the 80s. And, they disbanded, and he's gone on to release so many different albums, some on his own and others collaborative. I know he's done different albums with Brian Eno, who is a frequent producer, and actually wrote a lot of the songs on this album. And also his most recent project was done with St. Vincent, who was a personal favorite of mine. Now this is actually the first album I'm listening of David's. So I've never really checked out any of his solo work. So I thought maybe it's, now that I have the show, it'd be a good time to do so. And, lyrically, it's a little odd. A lot of the time, I don't really know what he's talking about. There are other songs that are a little bit clearer to me, but where this album really shines through, it's on the music. Like I mentioned previously, he did co-write almost all of the songs with Brian Eno, and two of the songs on here were written with Daniel Lopton, which is better known by his moniker Unorthodox Point Never. And I have mentioned him before because he's one of my favorite electronic artists out there today. Now let's just go straight into the album from the very top to the opening track, I Dance Like This. Now this one's a little weird. The verses here are very nice. We have a nice vocal delivery from David, as it has a more peaceful sound when it's led by the piano. But then when we get to the chorus, it switches into this really weird throbby section, which I wasn't really a fan of. I didn't like, how they kind of shifted back and forth. It just wasn't doing too much for me. Lyrically here, it was a little vague, but to me, I kind of took that he was talking about conformity. Gasoline and Dirty Sheets has a nice groove to it, and also some jangly guitar. So I was a much bigger fan of this track. It has a much catchier sound. And on here, I think he's talking about the American dream and how it's really hard for some people to obtain. Every Day is a Miracle is one of the singles released from this album, and musically, I did enjoy it. It has this nice tropical vibe, but lyrically, it just kind of lost me. I really had no clue what he was talking about. Dog's Mind is a softer, tranquil track in which he's talking about how dogs don't really have to worry about all the stressful things that we have to worry about. So I'm pretty envious. Dogs do have it better. This Is That is another single release from the album, and this one also has more of a tranquil sound. This is one of those tracks that was written with Daniel Lopton, and I like the simple melody that was on this track, but lyrically again, I really couldn't tell you what it's about. Bullet has a nice melody, and also musically, it's pretty interesting, as they're basically going through the journey of a bullet as it goes through his victim. Doing the Right Thing has a lot of good things going on here. Instrumentally, I really enjoyed it. It has great strings in it too. And there's also this little intermission part with this great little synth line. Everybody's Coming to My House is another single from the album, and this one is a lot more upbeat. I really enjoyed this one sonically. It has a really great rhythm to it. And then the album closes with Here, which was another song co-written with Daniel Lopton. And musically, this one reminded me a lot of Red Rain by Peter Gabriel, which is one of my personal favorites. In closing, I was a fan of this album. Lyrically, there's some missteps where I don't really understand what he's talking about, but sonically, I really enjoyed what him and Brian did on this album. This is going to get a score of a 7.5 out of 10 from me. So if you're a fan of David Byrne, I recommend you check this out. And even if you're not, I think it's one to at least give a few listens to. Next up for review, we have the second release from British singer Rae Morris. This is called Someone Out There. Now, Rae is an artist I'm not familiar with at all. I just kind of stumbled upon one of her songs, and I liked her voice, and I liked the music, so I decided to give this a try. This is, again, her second album. It's being released through Atlantic Records, and her voice here reminds me a lot of Nicole Niglis, who is the lead singer of 100 Waters, who is an exciting electropop band out there. If you're not familiar with 100 Waters, I recommend you go and check them out. As for this album, wow, there's a lot of really great songs on here. Lyrically, I think it's really on point. She definitely connected to me because she's just talking about relationships, very universal stuff, and sonically too, very catchy songs, and even on the slower ones, just enough there to really grab my attention. So here, let's go and start up at the top with the opening track, Push Me to My Limit, which is a soft opener. There's only like organ here. There's also some subtle horns that are used very effectively. And her voice here is really nice, just from the beginning. On this track, she is talking about the push and pull of relationships in general. Reborn is one of the singles released from this album, and this is a great pop song. It has a pulsating beat, really nice synth melody, strings, and the music here, it kind of swells up, but it gets to a point where you think it's going to get bigger, but it doesn't. It just kind of holds it there, and I liked it. I liked that it didn't go all the way. Here she is talking about feeling reborn after a breakup. Athletico, The Only One, is another single released from the album, and this is a really catchy song, both vocally and sonically. It has a really nice beat. Here she's talking about the regret of not talking to a guy while she's out, but now she's kind of reflecting on it, but it's a little too late because she's already at home and she happens to be alone. Do It is another single, and this is the one that grabbed my attention from the beginning. It has a nice bounce to it, but also an ethereal quality. Here she's asking somebody to take a risk with her and just do it. And I like it because, that can be implied in many different ways. Wait for the Rain is a mellower track, more synth-led, and this is kind of a downer. Here she's talking about, wanting the rain to kind of wash away all of her pain. Lower the Tone is one that I really like sonically, especially when it starts to swell up with this synth line. Here she's talking about liking the affection, although she's a little apprehensive about intimacy. Physical Form has a slower piano progression, but underneath it, it's a pretty quick beat. Here she's talking about despite being close to somebody, she still feels like she's being ignored. Dip My Toes was another really catchy song that had nice bounce to it. Here she's really hoping that their bodies rhyme well together. And I liked it because it's sexual, but yet she kind of keeps it a little light as well. The title track, Someone Out There, is a piano ballad with a simple beat underneath. Here she's telling people to kind of keep your head up because there's bound to be someone out there for you. Rose Garden is one where there's this hard pushing beat on the verses and then gets much softer on the chorus. And I really like the contrast between both of those parts. Here she's talking about comforting someone who's going through a pretty rough ordeal. And the closing track, Dancing with Character, has a brighter sound, but also some somber lyrics. Here she's talking about someone who's fondly remembering how her and her partner used to dance together. To close things out, I was a big fan of this album. Lyrically, she's writing about things that you can really relate to, and musically, it's great, it's catchy. There's great production on here. Oh man, such a big fan of the production. So this is gonna get a high score from me. I'm gonna give this an 8.5 out of 10. So far, it's one of my favorite pop albums of the year, and one I recommend you check out. And the last album up for review, we have the latest from JPEGMAFIA. This is called Veteran. Now, this is an artist I'm not familiar with at all, but he is a rapper from Baltimore. His real name is Barrington Hendricks, but on the album, he's referred to as Peggy a few times. I think that's kind of like his little signature on his beats. He does handle the production work on his own, and it's pretty impressive. It's very unconventional, though. He may have some catchy beats here underneath, but above it, there's always some glitchy sound, a lot of different effects. Even his flow here is a little odd. He'll switch it up between songs, where he goes really aggressive, maybe going after the alt-right or white supremacist, and then kind of, tones it down a bit. And there's even moments where he sings and, has a slight R&B influence, but this album's really all over the place. The album's not too long, it's only 47 minutes, but there are 19 tracks, where some of these run, between 3 to 4 minutes, like a regular runtime, and a lot of these are just really short, about 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes. So there's a lot of material to go over. So let's go straight up at the top with the opening track, 1539 North Calvert. This, I thought, was a great opener. We find more of a conventional beat on this track, as he's talking about a lot of different random stuff. Here, he's even talking about his dislike for this album and how he wants you to dislike it as well. Thug Tears has a very unconventional sound. Here we get like a deep bass and also different samples and just random switches that happen throughout. But I did like his flow on this track. Baby I'm Bleeding has a loop sample that goes over a glitchy beat, as his flow switches up a lot too. Here he's going after everyone from SoundCloud rappers to women abusers. Rock and Roll is Dead is kind of put into two different sections. The first part, which is a lot more aggressive with his flow, and on the second is where he goes more into that R&B realm. The beat here is a little bit more straightforward, but above it, there's a lot of different sound effects that really weird things up. But despite that, I really enjoyed this track. DD Form 214 features vocal contributions from Bobby Rush, and I really liked her delivery on here. She has a nice voice. There's a point here in which she starts interpolating a Janet Jackson song, and the second time we hear her voice, the pitch is much lower, so she's hard to recognize. And even JPEGMAFIA himself has a slower flow, as it's all going over a more relaxed beat. I really enjoyed the more melodic sound of Panic Emoji. Here he's talking about everything from suicidal thoughts to panic attacks. Macaulay Culkin also had more of a melodic, steady beat, as we also get some guitar lines in here, as he's pointing out to different 90s references and also talking about his need to keep it real. Williamsburg has a darker feel, as he's talking about taking back their neighborhoods from gentrification. On I Can't Fucking Wait Till Morrissey Dies, we have a great synth line over a banging beat, as he's taking shots at both Morrissey and John Lydon. Those are all the songs that I enjoyed the most. but there's still so many others that I thought were just okay. I do want to mention a few though, like Real Nega, which has a sample of ODB's Going Down. And on this track itself, ODB, he has a very unique voice where he'd kind of like sing. It has a weird quality to it, and it uses a sample of his singing on here as JPEGMAFIA is rapping very aggressively over it. On Whole Foods, we have a glitchy beat as he raps about, really doing this for the love of it and not because he's looking to sign to a label or make any money. 1488 has a real dark tone as he's talking about raging against white supremacists. And then the album closes with the aggressive curb stomp, in which he's talking about curb stomping on his enemies, like the alt-right. And if you're not sure what curb stomping is, then go check out the movie American History X, and you'll see what that is. Ugh. To close things out, this was definitely a challenging listen, but the more you listen to it, there's things that you'll like about it. You'll definitely appreciate the production for being very unconventional. And although you hear a great beat, and sometimes you just kind of wish he wouldn't add that other stuff that makes it just very bizarre, that's what makes this artist so original. And I like the fact that he's able to really switch on a dime, within the same song. Not just in the production, but also in his delivery. I'm going to give this album a score of a 7 out of 10. So if you're willing to give some experimental hip-hop a chance, then I would recommend you check this out. Well, there you go with 3 new albums for you to potentially check out. If you like the reviews, then make sure to leave a comment down at the bottom. And of course, any suggestions you guys may have for me of albums you may want me to listen to, I would always take those. While you're down there typing away, make sure to hit the like button, or you could always subscribe.